For my next anime review, I am doing Mamoru Hosoda's newest film, Scarlet. This anime film is done by Studio Chizu, and it is rated PG-13. Now, for those of you who have watched my previous videos, know that I have enjoyed Mamoru Hosoda's past work quite a bit. I've done reviews for all of his original films, outside of course the Digimon movie, but we're not talking about that. And I've enjoyed them from various degrees, and I knew with this being another film by Mamoru Hosoda, I could at least go in with expectations of getting a good original anime film. And essentially that's what I got. So I walked out of the theater fairly happy. Now, with that being said, Mike, I do have complaints with Scarlet as a whole. Some of them mainly being the pacing of the film can be off at times. And I did feel like some of the editing choices were fairly weird. And there were a couple sequences in this film that just had me scratch my head. It's like, okay, I think we could have gone without a random dance number. And I understand that it was a way to push Scarlet's character growth, but honestly, I think there could have been much better ways at doing that than a random dance number in Japan. And there was another musical number previous to the film with a bunch of nomads within the film that I felt that was a bit odd choice. At least that one fit within the setting of Scarlet. Both of those were the two scenes I felt were out of place. Thankfully, they don't go on for too long. This film does feel, even though it's under 2 hours, it does feel, even for an hour and a half, even then it feels too long. I do think this movie could have easily been an hour and 10 minutes, and the story would have been a lot more tighter. Another thing that really kind of bugged me in the film is Hijari. I believe that's what his name was. He is the Japanese character of the movie. He's one of those archetypes that bugs me a lot of the time, and he's essentially a type of pacifist character. I understand what they were going for. The contract Scarlet's seek for revenge for the death of his father. That's not a spoiler, that's in the trailer. So they use him as a counter to Scarlet's whole revenge, and it just he kind of got on my nerves, if I'm going to be honest, for a good portion of the film. He does get better, thankfully, throughout the film, and the resolution with him the resolution with him at near the end of the film was satisfactory. I thought they finished his character off pretty well. Scarlet as well has a good, well, I feel like a tad bit messy in the execution. I do feel like she has a rather convincing redemption arc. Another thing that I felt was really kind of lackluster in this film were the villains. The villains are way too cartoonish in my opinion, and it felt out of place. And I felt like Mamoru Hosoda was going too hard in making them cartoonishly evil, and it was mainly the henchmen. The main villain of the film is pretty good. I'm not going to spoil who one of the main villains of the film is, but it's fairly early on, and even with those aspects of the film that bugged me, I still enjoyed Scarlet quite a bit. Even though I felt like the movie was a tad bit long, it didn't feel overly long, and it was still fairly easy to watch. The pacing, for the most part, was fine, except of course in that middle portion of the film with those two out of place scenes I talked about earlier. The music as well was quite good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the music in the film quite a bit. Scarlet as a character is rather likable in this film. She has very understandable motivations for what she's doing. The animation in this film is pretty good. It doesn't look as good as Mamoru Hosoda's previous film, Belle. There is quite a bit of CGI used in this film, especially with massive crowds of people. The CGI could be kind of janky whenever you would see large crowds of people. The action in this film with the sword fights and stuff is passable in my opinion. This is Mamoru Hosoda's first fantasy or dark fantasy, and you can tell he's not used to sword fights or heavy action sequences within this film. When there aren't massive crowds of people in the film, when there are a dozen or so characters on screen, that's when the movie looks better and the CGI is less jank because there aren't so many people on the screen. With this being Mamoru Hosoda's first fantasy type of film, like I said, I still enjoyed the film quite a bit, but you can tell that there was some execution issues with the film. Mamoru Hosoda, you can tell that Mamoru Hosoda is not used to this style of storytelling. One other thing I do want to mention, I wanted to watch this movie in sub, but by mix-up on my end of the film, I went in watching the dub. I thought the sub was going to be earlier in the day, but that was in the evening. The dub of this film is hit or miss, honestly. Sometimes it borderlines on just terrible. Other times it's fine. The voice cast is fine in the dub. I'm sure the sub is a lot better, and when I eventually do see this film again, I am definitely going to be watching the film in sub instead of dub. There was some really jank dialogue within the dub, and thankfully that doesn't happen too often. The dubs in Mamoru Hosoda's films tend to be pretty good. The dub in Scarlet is just overall fine. It's not the worst thing, but it's nowhere near as something like Wolf Children's dub, which that was a fantastic dub in my opinion. And when you take all of that into account, I thought this movie was pretty good. It is not Mamoru Hosoda's best work. That is still, honestly, in my opinion, Wolf Children is still his best film. I'm sure that's going to differ from person to person, but this is by no means his worst film. That, in my opinion, is still Mirai, but Mirai is still not a bad film. This definitely fits right above Mirai, in my honest opinion, and that is why my score for Mamoru Hosoda's Scarlet, a 7 out of 10. Despite some of the pacing issues, some story elements just not working all that well, a fine dub, sometimes terrible, this film is still very enjoyable. If you have watched Mamoru Hosoda's previous work, I do think you're going to enjoy this. And despite some terrible CGI, the movie overall looks great. It's not Mamoru Hosoda's best looking film, that is still, in my opinion, Belle, and this is his most different looking film. And I actually enjoyed the art style within the film as well. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments if you have seen Scarlet or not. If you haven't, I can definitely give this a recommend. And yeah, I wait your guys' comments down below. So, as always, I'll see you in the next one. This has been Ryder. I'm out.